that they were afraid, okay, that the government is afraid, that the courts are saying that the government is afraid that he will be an icon for the anti-vaxxers. An icon for the anti-vaxxers. You are literally the courts acting like some sort of mouthpiece for the Australian police state. Yes, the police state government, the totalitarian police shithole government that they are. They are now acting as some sort of mouthpiece for the government, saying we shouldn't allow him in. It would be a mistake to allow him in, because his vaccination status, which is absolutely a personal medical choice, is going to somewhat inspire more anti-vax sentiments in Australia, among Australians. That's crazy. Right, let me just check the levels here. Make sure that everything is all set. We now have sound. So sound is speed, and I will start in 3, 2, 1. Hello everyone, welcome back to Unmuzzled in this 8th episode of the series so far. Yes, that's right, we are currently 8 episodes in already. Número 8, I believe, in Spanish. Yes, ocho is 8 in Spanish, and I think that huit is 8 in French, but basically means all the same, number 8. So yes, before I get carried away with that, I'm very happy to have come this far already in my podcast venture. This is something very, very new. And, honestly, at the beginning, I just never really thought that I even get past 1 or 2 episodes, to be honest. So definitely very happy to have come this far. And while this is a sort of a one-man show, I'm pretty much the only person running it. Like, I'm literally the one writing the episodes, or at least planning the episodes. I don't really have a script. It's always just, kind of off the cuff, and I'm most of the time just winging it, especially when I have the guests over. So yes, in terms of production and the recording and all of that, even the equipment, pretty much everything is a one-man show. I do that all by myself, but I am also very thankful to number one, all of you listeners, the people who've been following me, whether you started following me on Instagram and Twitter. I think I announced on Twitter first about this, and then I did posted a video on my my other YouTube channel, the older one, Hazween 23, and I kind of gave a little teaser, an introduction of what's to come for this podcast series where I made the announcement. So thank you so much to all of you who've been following me from the start. Also to the people who have been on the show, been on the podcast, right? For all the past episodes. All my guests have been phenomenal. I mean, it's always a pleasure to just have someone on and talk to you rather than just speaking into the mic on your own. It's always great to have someone to bounce off on, right? All the talking points, and really most of the time when I'm on my own, I make a lot of mistakes, and there's a lot of editing during the actual recording and in post. So yeah, it's always great to have someone else on the show, and I've had recurring guests. Big shout out to Kerry for having come on the podcast itself twice, on the actual audio recording, and also being part of the flood relief aid being sent out to the various affected areas in Selangor. So I was basically just merely tagging along with her, and it was Kerry who formed this team of volunteers, and she was one who had the initiative to contribute the funds. She was the one who had all the funds and financed all of it. And myself and Farah from MFM, we kind of came in and gave as much as we could in terms of our energy and time, and effort. So that was a very fun experience. So big shout out to Kerry for having come on a number of times already, 3 times now. The third one was a special kind of, there was a video. It was more of like a vlog documentary. I think it ran for at least 30 minutes. So thank you to Kerry for that. And I'll be very happy to have you back on anytime at all in the future to talk about more interesting stuff, especially the things that have come up just as of late in our own personal chats. Be very happy to share that with our listeners, I'm sure. And I'm sure that they will all look forward to having you back on the podcast and listening to you. So that's been a great run with Kerry so far, and also to all my other guests. The most recent one obviously is Lena, also a friend of mine, and before that was Elizabeth Huxtable, the sound healer, right? So again, big thank you to Elizabeth for coming on the podcast in that, I think it was the 4th episode. It was the one after Kerry's one. So it's I'm just happy that these people have been part of my podcast run so far and have all contributed and been part of making it as viable. I guess I don't want to really call it successful because who am I? I'm a nobody. But yes, just that it's come to fruition. I mean, again, I never really expected for this series to run beyond a couple of episodes, honestly. So very, very happy to have gotten this far. So for this episode, this is not going to be the usual kind of, 1 hour, at least like 40-minute recording. It's not going to run as long as the previous ones because, one, this wasn't planned. This was literally just, in the spur of the moment. I literally only planned this the second I got to my desk and switched on my laptop and started, hooking up my microphone. So it wasn't planned at all. And I don't really have a proper breakdown of the points that I want to talk about. So it's not going to be like a serious podcast. Not that, my podcasts have been that serious. I hope not, because it's not supposed to be. It's supposed to be more conversational and, very casual kind of talking points when it's just with me. I guess I just, kind of go on for a little bit and then try to wrap things up at the end and try to have kind of go over the points that I addressed. And then when I have guests on, I bounce off their ideas. We kind of bounce off each other, which is even better. So this one is going to be a lot shorter, I think, and it's gonna be more of a rant. Yes. So that's number 1. And number 2, this wasn't planned because I wasn't really planning to have an episode like episode 8 this soon, as I do have a guest coming on scheduled for future episodes. But I decided to start recording anyway because I feel that there is something very important to address. Okay. And it has gone all the way up the priority list. And that is, what the hell is happening in Australia? Like, really, people, what the hell? Australia has fallen. Come on. I mean, it kind of, I know, with the recent what's happened to Djokovic, and I'll get to that in a bit, because that's going to be the bulk of what I'm going to talk about in this episode. But just, even before it took somebody of the likes of Djokovic to finally get this onto the world stage. Australia has just been this crazy, place that has gone from bad to worse in the blink of an eye. It's ridiculous how quickly they've slipped down this slippery slope. And, we used to just call that, that's just a fallacy. A slippery slope is literally a fallacy. How you describe an argument that is fallacious, that doesn't have good grounds or even any grounds to begin with, right? But that fallacy has now become true. It's literally what's happening in Australia. They've just slipped further down the slope. I mean, how did we let this happen? How? You know what? I actually have an answer to all of that. And that is, we just, we allowed it to happen, for good men, for good people to just be silent observers when evil is happening is literally the same as just being evil. That is in itself evil. If you allow for evil to happen because you just stayed quiet, because you really couldn't care less, because you felt that, it's not affecting me, so I'll just get on with my life. I'll probably say something when it starts affecting me. If you have been one of those, and I'm sorry to call you that, but if you've been one of those silent observers, the compliers, yes, or the sheep, and again, I'm sorry, but that is literally what most of you have been for not having spoken up. I guess in a way you kind of deserve this, but I mean, for me, just looking from the outside, this is just absurd. This is crazy that it has gotten this far, and that it has taken for a tennis player, right? The world number one, no less, to finally get this, to bring this to light, to shed light on this issue, and to just show everyone just how absurd it is. Right. So before I delve deeper into that, right? If for those of you who don't know, okay, I guess I want to start with how this Djokovic thing happened, right? So I myself, personally, I've never really been a fan of Djokovic. I've always kind of found him annoying, to be honest. I have been a long time a diehard fan of Rafael Nadal for the longest time. I think since I was basically a teenager. We're the same age, so since he broke out into the professional scene on the ATP, that was I remember, like, he was a nobody then, and I think we were both 18, and that was when I started kind of rooting for this guy, right? Because I knew that there was something special. So for the longest time, I was the biggest diehard fan of Rafael Nadal. All right. And I think for most people who either like Nadal or Federer, they all find Djokovic annoying. He's never a crowd favorite. He's all, obviously in the recent years, he's proven himself, becoming, world number one and equaling the Grand Slam tally with Nadal and Federer at the top there. Right. But before that, he's always this, he's this guy that people likes to diss on. He doesn't quite get the cheers from the crowd. He always gets the boos for some reason. So yeah, that's that's Djokovic, and how I kind of came to know him as a professional player. But now, given what's happened, I mean, it's crazy, right? I have fully converted myself to becoming his number one fan. It's crazy because, being a lifelong diehard fan of Nadal, you would never, you can ask any Nadal fan out there, they will never convert. They will, especially if it's either a Nadal or a Federer fan. And those of you who watch tennis and follow tennis, you all know what I mean, right? As here I am, a fellow tennis fan here, talking about obsessing and ranting about this, right? If you've been a Nadal and a Federer fan all your life, you know exactly what I'm talking about, right? Yeah. That to fully convert yourself to becoming a Djokovic fan, no less, right? Is kind of unheard of, right? It's like nobody does that, right? But I have now. I have now because of what's happened. Now, let's just backtrack a little bit to how it all happened. Okay? So we know that, Djokovic, I think, has been pretty public about, his, not necessarily his medical choices. Okay? Because obviously those are very personal and should be private anyway. Nobody has the right to demand from him, of his vaccination status, whether it's COVID or, prior. But I think to some extent, it has been made public about his medical choices or lack thereof, right? Of medical interventions, at least in the sense of vaccinations. All right. And I think that has been quite been discussed for quite a bit, especially if not as, publicly, by everyone, right? At least in the tennis scene. Yeah. Within the professional tour. All right. So it hasn't really come as a surprise to, if you follow tennis, if you follow Djokovic, it doesn't really come as a surprise that he chooses not to be vaccinated. Okay. For anything. So obviously, coming into the Australian Open, and since Australia has, become this, I'm just going to say it, it's become this totalitarian state, right? Just completely overnight, basically, because people just let it happen. Okay, nobody stood up to their government, right? And so they've become this totalitarian state, and with the Australian Open there, Djokovic was, kind of found himself in a bit of a predicament. Now those of you who are still arguing, okay, oh, well, that's the way it works. Nobody can, the rules should work the same for everyone else. Yes, I agree with that. Okay, if you are coming from that end, okay, of the argument saying that Djokovic should just comply with the rules of the country that he is going to play in. Otherwise, he should not compete. He should not enter the country and compete, right? Fair enough. Now, that's what the narrative is trying to tell you. That's what the mainstream media is trying to poison your minds with, because that's not quite what happened. Now, what happened is, okay, again, as I said, it comes as no surprise that Djokovic remains unvaccinated, okay, for COVID. And coming to this, the Australian Open, all right, there's a lot of stake actually for Djokovic here, because they're tied now at 20 each Grand Slam. So there's 60 Grand Slams between the top three, Nadal, Federer, and Djokovic. So whoever wins number 21 first will be the greatest of all time. So there's a lot at stake here. And trust me, for someone of his caliber at that level, when you're playing at that level and you are playing for history, you don't take this lightly. All right. So he's coming into the Australian Open. All right. And again, he's not vaccinated. This is kind of well known. So what happened was he applied for an exemption, and the exemption was given to him. Okay, and I think that was through it obviously had to go through or was part of the visa application, as most people entering into Australia do need a visa. I mean, the last time I went there, which again will be the one and only time. I will never go to Australia for as long as they allow this to happen. All right. As a tourist, even, if you're visiting for a few days, you have to apply for a visa. Right. So no surprise. Nothing weird there at all. So he had to apply for a visa to enter and compete in Australia at the Australian Open. Right. And he had to do some paperwork. Obviously, he had to fill out, since they impose all these draconian COVID ridiculous rules, okay, on the vaccination and so on. So he had to fill out some paperwork, right? And he filled those out, right? And that was it. That was pretty much it. And he sent those papers in alongside with the visa application. He was granted because the organizers, at least as far as I know, I probably should check it again. Maybe you guys can check it if you want and verify this. But as far as I know, it was through the organizers of the Australian Open who gave this exemption. So that's usually how it works, right? You don't quite need, as long as the organizers are okay with that, and Djokovic does the visa application, in using the proper protocol, there shouldn't be a problem, right? And the reason, I should have probably said this earlier, the reason he got the exemption was because he had an earlier COVID infection. He already had COVID. So the argument was that he didn't need a vaccination because he already has natural immunity. And for as much as I know, as far as I know, a lot of other countries completely accept that this is a scientific fact. This is not something you just go around saying and making up, natural. But again, that's just how ridiculous things are right now, because even, trying to bring up natural immunity will make people paint you as some quack. It doesn't matter if you are a doctor or not, they'll just try to diss you and say that you are some purveyor of misinformation. Heck, that's what happened to Dr. Robert Malone. And I don't even want to start, on Dr. Robert Malone. All right. But that's just how crazy it is. So that's why he was given the exemption, because, on the grounds that he's already got COVID. So he has a natural immunity, therefore very, strong enough grounds for him to be exempt from the vaccine, therefore be allowed to enter the country and compete. And the organizers felt, okay, that was enough. And that's why they allowed him. So they granted him the exemption. He was allowed to play. And that's why he came. Why would he go through all that trouble, all right, it doesn't make sense at all, right? If you kind of look at the narrative that's being pushed down people's throats right now, it's as if he's trying to be this, like he's this big somebody, like he thinks he's above everyone else, he's above tennis, and that he has to be there, and that Australia has to receive him with arms wide open, and that the Australian Open cannot go on without him. All right? No, that's not the case at all. He was given the exemption. All right? And as I said, as someone at that level, as someone who is trying to play for the history books, there's a lot at stake. So I am, I believe, he is genuinely, really trying to go out and compete in the best way that he can, without obviously sacrificing his principles. Because, as I initially said, he just doesn't believe in these kinds of medical procedures and interventions, right? It's well known to some extent. It's known that he doesn't, he doesn't go for vaccinations. Probably never had a vaccination ever. I'm not sure, but that's the kind of background that we have on him. All right, so no surprise. So they gave him the exemption. Now he got down to Australia. He got down to Down Under. And suddenly they stopped him at the airport, right? The customs stopped him and started interrogating him, like as if he was just, like some terrorist. And he was detained for overnight, I think it was. Definitely, it was more like more than 8 hours, 10 hours. Okay? They detained him overnight at the airport without even as much as, allowing him for a change of clothes, because he was confined to just one room, right? And all he had was his phone, I think it was. Okay, and I'm just trying to remember right at the top of my head from the tweets on my timeline that's how I've managed to know the story. I've not been reading any of the stuff that MSM has been putting out, because none of that is real or true. So it's, as far as I know from the tweets I've been reading. From him personally, I think he put out something like an official response to all of this and a statement following that, the initial exemption and why he was detained at the airport. So as far as I know, that's what happened, right? He was detained and rather, unnecessarily being interrogated. And I think it was following that they found that there were some discrepancies with the paperwork. And apparently that there was a mistake with the information regarding how he or how he didn't quarantine himself, and he wasn't isolating himself after he tested positive, which was, I think, at some photo shoot or something, and that it was mostly because he had already promised the journalist that he'll turn up, and so that's what he did when he was supposedly, he was positive and he should have turned down the interview, shouldn't have turned up and isolated, right? So that was the thing, and I think whoever he was saying that the agent in charge of that kind of messed up, the papers, whatever. All right, so there's a little bit of a mess up with that information, and that's the reason for the questioning, the interrogation. So, okay. So then they use that as grounds for him not being 100% truthful. Okay, because when you have information that doesn't collate or doesn't add up, I guess, then that's, there's always going to be used as something against you, especially when they do have something to use against you in this situation. So following that, that's when he appealed, right, to still be allowed in, because once that interrogation was done, they decided, the customs, the border agency decided that he shouldn't be allowed in. So that's when the first appeal happened, and that's when the first court case was heard, right? And he actually won that court case. That was the initial one, because it was, it was ruled, based on the grounds that he's exempted because, he's already got COVID, and this seems like an honest mistake, and the event organizer, Australian Open organizers, are still okay. So yeah, we'll let him in. That's the first court case. Then suddenly, this is where the kicker is. Although for me, it's not really a kicker, because Australia has gone from bad to worse to absolutely like a shithole country right now. I'm sorry, Australians, but that's where you are right now, literally. When that was allowed, when he was still allowed to play, and people starting to get upset, again, projecting, Australians projecting. It's not Djokovic who made you stay at home or who made you get 3-4 jabs. Okay? Projecting, people were starting to get upset. Australians were starting to get upset. They were trying to get Djokovic kicked out. Then the government decided to do a U-turn and say, oops, hang on a minute. No, we're decided to not gonna let you in now. So this exemption is no longer valid, no longer holds for you. So that's when the second court hearing, I guess, or appeal took place, and that was the most recent hearing from the I can't remember the name of the judge, Judge Kelly, I think. All right, who made the decision? Who said, and you should really understand how ridiculous and dangerous as a precedent this is. That finally, why they decided to U-turn on their decision to allow him to play and not deport him, okay, meaning they will deport him in round 2 here, was that they were afraid, okay, that the government is afraid, that the courts are saying that the government is afraid that he will be an icon for the anti-vaxxers. An icon for the anti-vaxxers. You are literally the courts acting like some sort of mouthpiece for the Australian police state. Yes, the police state government, the totalitarian police shithole government that they are. They are now acting as some sort of mouthpiece for the government, saying we shouldn't allow him in. It would be a mistake to still let him play, to allow him in, because his vaccination status, which is absolutely a personal medical choice, is going to somewhat inspire more anti-vax sentiments in Australia, among Australians. That's crazy. You are literally, that's what they have said. I'm not even trying to make this up. This has been said now. It's all over the news. It's all over Twitter. You can find all the statements, official ones. There are receipts everywhere. Australia is not letting him in because of his views. They are deporting someone, Okay, an international, the best player of, and you know, arguably the best player in history of the sport so far. An international tennis player, tennis star, millionaire, multi-millionaire. Okay, famous, world famous. All right, they are not letting him in because he holds views that are counter to what the government is trying to push on its people. That it is somewhat anti-narrative of the government of Australia. That is crazy. They are not letting, in other words, let me just try and make this as simple as possible. They are not letting him in because he has personal views about his medical choice. It's no longer about health. If it was about health, they would have not allowed for the exemption and stuck to the policy that they had for basically everyone else. So again, you know, back to my original point, if you're arguing and saying, oh, so the, you know, Djokovic is not above the law, he should be under the same rules as everyone else. Sure, fair enough. But they allowed him in. They gave the exemption to him. The only reason that they did this was, number one, to make an example of him, to humiliate him, and to basically give, you know, tell the world and Australians that this is all about compliance. And we will humiliate you, and we will try to make an example of even the elites, that this is what happens when you try to even think for your own. Literally, they have deported him finally on the second time trying because he has views that go against the current Australian government's narrative. That is a dangerous precedent to set. If they can stop someone of the likes of Djokovic from coming in because he has views that are different to what the government believes in, what makes you think that they're not going to do the same to the rest of us peasants, to the rest of us plebs? I mean, think about it. He's a multi-millionaire, a very successful tennis player. All right? He's got all the resources at his disposal. But because he stood his ground, he remained principled. He would not allow anything, not even the Grand Slam titles, not the money, to compromise that. You know, he stood his ground, being principled. They couldn't take that. They did this whole thing to him just to prove a point, just to make him an example and tell everyone, this is what will happen if you don't comply. Tell me that this is about health. Tell me that the government, not just the Australian government, but governments around the world are doing this because they're worried about your health. Tell me that it is that. I dare you, tell me. Okay? And again, let me just reiterate. There's a lot riding for someone like Djokovic. He's trying to compete to become the world's greatest ever player that has ever held a tennis racket with the most number of Grand Slams and has had the most successful campaign at the Australian Open. I think the most successful of any Grand Slam, I guess, apart from Nadal at Roland Garros. You tell me how hard it would have been for him to make this decision. Had he not been a principled man, he would have just sold himself out and said, okay, I want to be the best. Do you think that for a professional tennis player who's been born naturally a competitor would want to miss out on the chance to become the greatest of all time and win number 21 and become the first when he's been tied so long with the other two, with Federer and Nadal? Do you think it's not hard to let go of that? But because he stood his ground, his principles mattered more. He made the right decision. He went with that and he made the right and moral decision. That's not what the media is trying to tell you. It's not what the media is trying to make you think of him. No. So there you go. A dangerous precedent. And if you think that this isn't worrying, you are still asleep. So wake up, everyone, wake up. And I'm not even trying to be annoying. I don't think I've been this emotional or assertive before. I've definitely gone up a few decibels in terms of my volume here. But this is crucial. This is a turning point that if you miss, you will go further down the slope and it will be the point of no return. I can promise you, I can guarantee you that. Absolutely. And if there are any Australians listening, you guys better leave. You guys better leave. You guys, not you guys really, but your government, your country, people running your country are putting Kim Jong-un and North Korea to shame. Really. The kind of propaganda and the narrative control and all the stuff that the police are doing there, beyond the wildest imaginations of the likes of Kim Jong-un. And he's been, that's a family business for him. He's been at it for generations. And Australia puts North Korea to shame. Jeez. So if you believe in freedom still, Australians, get out, leave now while you still can. I think you still can probably. But the longer you wait this out, the harder it's going to be. So, yeah. There you go. That's the episode for this time. Yeah, episode numero 8. As I said, it's not supposed to be as long as the other ones. It's mostly a rant, really. So I hope you listen right to the very end. And bear with me, I guess, as we go on this just ridiculous times of insanity. It's going to be dark. It's going to get dark, definitely. But you see, every time something good happens, something bad needs to happen. It's always the darkest before the dawn. And I'm not even trying to be cliche, but that's what it is. There are people who are fighting out there for not just themselves. You know, I myself, I'm considered, I'm out and proud. All right, where I stand on all of this. So I'm fighting. I'm putting myself out there. And if you think that is a safe thing to do, that I do that because, I'm comfortable with all, with being like this because I like the attention, you're very wrong. You are very, very mistaken. Gravely mistaken. I'm doing it because it is the right thing to do. It's not the easy thing to do. It is the most difficult thing to do right now. When especially, being confronted with all these lies and deceit and all the propaganda being pushed on you, and everyone is just being so easily stupefied, I guess the word I'm looking for, so easily consumed by all of this propaganda and not even questioning, not even one bit. It is literally like the hardest thing anyone can go through. In times of deceit, in times like this, speaking the truth will become a rarity, will become, a rare virtue, really. You can trust me on that. All right, so that wraps up this episode. Just about, I guess, under 40 minutes. I think that should be okay for a little rant. So you will hear from me in the next one, episode 9, yeah? Numero 9. Before then we get to this. So that's all, folks. That's all for now. See you later. Bye.